Our next guest is going to speak with us about matters relating to visa applications for the United States of America. And it comes really on the heels of a lot of talk and preparation for the July-August vacation. A lot of persons are planning their trips, expecting to travel outside of Trinidad and Tobago. And it comes really at a time where the pandemic is behind us. A lot more places are opening up. And one would expect that people especially would want to travel beyond the shores of Trinidad and Tobago. So to help us understand the visa application process at the United States Embassy here in Trinidad and Tobago and all matters surrounding visas that we would want to find out, we have joining us the visa chief at the U.S. Embassy of Trinidad and Tobago, Frank Lavoie. Good morning and welcome to AM Prime.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. So this is, of course, something that a lot of people, I'm sure, will benefit from in terms of the conversation. And to be quite frank, I remember seeing on the U.S. Embassy's Facebook page recently a discussion that was taking place. It was called First Fridays. That took place on June 2nd. And it spoke to the topic of groups applying for the B1, B2 visas. Now, to really start the conversation, I would love for our viewers to understand what are the different types of visas that are available to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who may be traveling to the United States for different reasons.
Great. And I'm glad you watched our First Friday informational session. We do that every first Friday. Different topics, different themes, everything to do with consular affairs here in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, of course, you're asking about the visitor visas type questions, but we also do immigrant visas, green cards, people to go live in America, and we also, our most primary service is American services, serving our American citizens here. But to address your tourist question, we have B1, B2, which covers all the different types of tourism that you can do, either leisure, medical, or business. But we also have other non-immigrant visas that people can use. We have student visas, of course, very important to get Trinidadians in America studying in colleges across the country. We also do work visas, whether working on an H-1 at a company or transferring, maybe an airline going to work in the U.S. on an L visa. We also have O&P visas, which are the performers, which you know, the soca artists that go to America and entertain us. So we have a wide variety of non-immigrant visas that we do.
Sure.
And of course, the wait time is longest for the tourist visas because that's the majority of people, but we serve all the clients.
Understood. And just for us to make that distinction for persons looking on who are not too sure about the whole process, there are the immigrant applications and the non-immigrant. So non-immigrant meaning persons who will be coming to the United States temporarily. They're not looking to set up shop in the United States. I just wanted us to make that distinction there. Now, we are seeing, of course, places across the world opening up, and one such place is the United States of America. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, we understood that there were some challenges in terms of processing visas because the embassy would have been closed just as all other restrictions would have caused. But we know that there would have been a backlog. Can you tell us where that is at this moment?
Yes, that's a great question. So just like everyone else in Trinidad and Tobago, we had restrictions imposed on us. So the waiting room could only have a few people at a time and so on. So it did create a backlog in all our different services. So I'm very pleased to say for immigrant visa services, which is the green cards, people going to live in America, reconnect with their family members, we eliminated that soon after I got here by February of 2022. So there's no backlog there. So anyone who's applying for a green card to join their family members gets their appointment within the 30 days, and they get processed very quickly.
Excellent.
Now, and on the American Citizen Services side, we also obviously had a backlog, and that's down to just a couple of weeks for each service we provide there as well. So that's great. Now, for the visas, which is, of course, what the majority of people are concerned about, I mentioned the special visas, such as the work visas, performer visas, crew visas, students. Those are a week or less. So we have those appointments. We make sure they're constantly there. We want the students to go to America. Matter of fact, today we have 25 students coming just today to the embassy. So we're making a big effort to make sure, especially as the summer approaches and the young people are getting ready to go in the fall, that they all have their visas in hand.
Understood.
So now you want to ask about the tourist visas. I know that's a big number that's hanging over our head. So at one point, we had an 11-month wait time here in Trinidad and Tobago, and it was imposed by the limitations that we could bring in people to the embassy. Now that those limitations are up, we're bringing in up to 300 people a day. So the wait time is now, I'm glad to say, 114 days, which is not too bad. So that's less than 4 months compared to 11 months. But we do have something I want to mention, which is the interview waiver program, which is basically you don't have to come into the embassy for an interview. You just mail in your passport and get a visa placed in it, and it gets mailed back out to you through DHL. So basically, it applies automatically for children under the age of 14 and those senior citizens over the age of 80. They automatically qualify to attempt this process. And anyone who has a current visa that is either current or expired within the last 4 years, if they answer the questions on the application form correctly, which is the major problem that they don't many times, if they answer the questions correctly, they're then prompted to say that you don't need to come in for an interview, you can mail it in. And that also has a slight wait time. So at the new year, when this year started, it was at 100 days, which was still better than, the coming in for an interview. But we have it down to 36 days, and it's increasing. And so I'm predicting, and I might not be exactly right to the exact date, but at the end of the month, anyone who's qualified to mail in their visa to the U.S. Embassy will be able to do it the same day they pay the fee.
Wow.
So basically, it will prompt you to say you qualify for this program, you have to go pay your fee. You go to Scotiabank, you pay your fee, and then you'll be released and be able to mail it in almost immediately. So that will be great. That is something we really want to promote. But the people need to answer all the questions correctly, because if you answer the questions wrong, it's going to say you have to come in for an interview, and then you have to wait for whatever the development is at that time.
Got you. So let's talk a bit about the process and having that clear, because it's still for a lot of people a process that they are intimidated by, and not necessarily because they have sought the information and feel overwhelmed by the information, but because of hearsay, because of them hearing from a friend, a family member about this overwhelming process, and we want to kind of demystify that a bit. So can you walk us through the steps? How does a person who decides, I want to apply for a tourist visa to go to the United States, move from that thought into the process and actually getting that visa?
I mean, that's a great question, and that's the main purpose. We're out here doing outreach to people. We want people to get the correct information, because you're correct. When you hear the word on the street, 95% of the time or more, it's completely wrong and even negative information that's going to hurt your application. So anyone who wants to apply for a non-immigrant visa, the temporary visa, you would just go online to the official website, make sure it's not a scammer site. You would fill out an application, which is quite simple, actually, again, on this website. And once you answer all the questions, it will determine whether you need to come in for an interview or not. And then it'll prompt you to go pay the fee, which I should mention the fee has just increased actually this weekend, unfortunately. So anyone who paid the fee prior to this weekend, that's good. Even if your appointment's 3 or 4 months from now, not a problem. But anyone paying now will have to pay the increased fee, which is for a B1, B2 is now $185 application fee. And for petition-based work visas, it's $205 now. So a slight increase. So, and the key here is also you can only pay in person at Scotiabank. So if any website is telling you pay a fee online for a U.S. visa, that's all incorrect. We don't do visa fees online, only in person at Scotiabank. And then once you pay the fee, you could log back into your account on the computer system, let them know that your fee's been paid, and then it will either prompt you to book an appointment, which will be in a week or less if you're a petition-based, or within about 3 to 4 months if you need an interview, or it will tell you you're in a virtual queue, just wait to mail in your passport once you've been told, which right now, as I mentioned, is about 36 days.
Understood. Now, we've already discussed in terms of getting to the point of an interview and so on. But one of the things that was a bit interesting for me in looking at that live discussion that took place on the embassy's Facebook page is that persons can actually, especially groups, can send information into the embassy prior to their appointment to more or less let the embassy know that a group is coming, the nature and so forth. Could you tell us a bit more about what are some of those things persons can contact the embassy prior for as they go through that process?
Sure, yes, thank you for mentioning this. I want to talk about groups and make sure I also talk about the new quiet hours we have for people with special needs. So as far as the groups go, we want to know if you have a large group, 6 to 10 or more, we want to know about it. So you can email us, and the email is counselorpos@state.gov. So that's counselor, and then POS like Port of Spain at like State Department.gov, like government. And you would write us, tell us, in an email, you would list all the participants. You would say the who, what, why, and where, of course. So you're telling us on this date, we're going to go here to do this, and this is who's going to do it. And regardless of whether the actual people are grouped together on the appointment site or not, that's not important. We can group people, but we want to know so that we can find a time where we can bring everybody in at the same time and adjudicate them all together, because sometimes that provides better context than just one-off people coming in with no context to the greater group. So please, definitely, if you have a group of 6 to 10 or more, email us, and we will do our best to find a convenient time and provide us plenty of time to issue the visas. And remember, we do expedites, but the expedite appointments are really for emergencies, life, death, important business that is important to the United States.
Yes.
Not necessarily to the applicant. It has to be important for the United States for us to expedite the appointment. And so everyone, if you need an appointment, you really need to book 3 to 4 months out currently. But even if you have an emergency or something coming up quick, we still need a good week to 2 weeks to make sure we can process the visa and get it back to you. So just groups email us. And the quiet hours, if I can mention that before I forget, this is something new we started because we do realize there are people with neurological, medical, mobility issues or other physical and mental issues that might need special time, not be in a crowd. And so we have quiet hours now. So again, if you use the same email I just mentioned, counselorpos@state.gov, you can write up to us, tell us who you are, when your current appointment is, and we will get an appointment on or about the same day, but in the afternoon, so that they can come in without the big crowds, without all the hassle of everything going on. And we especially encourage people in like wheelchairs or maybe the elderly who can't move very quickly, or people who have other issues. Please take advantage of this. This is going to not help you, it's going to help us, it's going to help the whole process. And we really want people to take advantage of this. We want to get the word out. It's a new program. So just email us and let us know your particular situation, and we'll set aside time in the afternoon so that you can come in, and it'll be a nice, easy process for everyone.
Excellent. Now, Frank, one of the things that people aren't too familiar with, especially those who have never gone through the process before, gotten to the point of an interview, would be what takes place on the actual day or what to expect. So you've gotten your appointment date. You are expected to, your appointment is, let's say, 9 a.m. on whatever given day. What are some of the things that persons coming into or coming to the embassy should be aware of, such as in terms of arrival time and going through that process?
Sure, great question, because many people seem to be very scared when they show up at the embassy for some reason. We're very friendly, we're very customer service oriented, and we want to obey the law. So whether you qualify or not, we're going to be nice and polite and enforce the law. But basically, whatever time your appointment is, do not show up more than 15 minutes early, because we only want to deal with you within a 15-minute window of when your appointment is. Because as you know, a crowd can form on Marley Street, and we don't want that. We can only bring people at their appointment times, certain numbers and everything, so we don't want the big crowds. It's not safe, and obviously there's no cover. We have a very old embassy, unfortunately. So show up no earlier than 15 minutes, get into line. We have greeters on the outside who will, of course, greet you. We'll ask you your particular purpose. Are you NIV, non-immigrant visa, immigrant visa, American Citizen Services? They'll put you in the correct line. They'll check your documents, make sure that everything's in order. They'll remind you of the prohibited items, which is a major issue that we have. No cell phones, no smartwatches, no weapons, no bags. Leave those things in your car, at home, somewhere, because if you show up with them, we're going to tell you you need to put them somewhere, store all these items, which could cause you to, be late or some other issue. And we have a policy now that we have signs everywhere. The greeters tell you 2 or more times about all the prohibited items. So if you show up and you actually get to the point where you're entering security with a prohibited item, you will be told to go home, because there's really reason why you still have these items on you after you pull all that. So once you get in, you go through security, which is just a brief check. You get in the line, and there's basically 3 steps for most people, the tourist people in particular. You would be told to get in line for data entry, which is they're going to confirm that all your information is correct. Very friendly local staff will confirm everything, ask you a few simple questions. They're then going to tell you to go to the second step, which is across the other side of the waiting room, which is to go get your fingerprints. And again, another easy procedure, left hand, right hand, 2 thumbs, very simple, friendly. And then you're told to get into the final 3rd step, which is the interview with the officer. Into a line, and there's up to 3 officers available, and when you get up, they'll call you up to the window, and it's really 3 minutes is the typical, or even less sometimes, interview time, because they have your application, they have other information about you, and they're just going to ask you a few questions. Why you're traveling, who you're traveling with, what's the purpose, how long you're going to stay, and a few other things about your job and family perhaps. And then they will enforce the immigration law and advise you whether you've been approved or not. And even if you're unfortunately not qualified for a visa at that time, it will be done politely. You'll be given a paper explaining under which section of the law you've been refused. And of course, if you're approved, congratulations, and they'll give you another piece of paper telling you that you're to go home and wait for DHL to inform you by email that the package is ready for either pickup at their location in El Socorro, or if you've paid the extra fee online earlier, it will be delivered to whatever location you notify. So it's really simple, 3 minutes of actual interview with an American officer such as myself, perhaps 15 minutes inside the embassy if all is going smoothly, if everything's working well. So really easy, nothing to be afraid about.
And but let's just talk a bit about if someone is denied the visa at that point in time, can they reapply? How long after can they reapply? Those are some questions that persons might have.
That's probably the most common question you have. You're going to be given a piece of paper telling you which section of the law you've been refused under. Most people are refused under the simple 214B, which is an intending immigrant, which is temporary in nature and can be overcome at any point in the future should you meet all the requirements of the law. So people ask, when can we reapply again? Whenever you want. Now, as long as you pay a fee, you will be interviewed. But we always advise you want to have your situation changed so that you're now overcoming the law. Because if you've just been refused under the section of law, something needs to change before you come back to show that you're now qualified. People who come back, a week or 2 later, usually get refused again because nothing has changed. Now, you might also get a letter with other sections of the law that you don't qualify under, and that's more serious. These are called hard ineligibilities, and those you really need to look into. And some are permanent. If you, like, for example, if you lie at the U.S. Embassy and get caught out, you can be banned permanently from ever entering the United States. So at that point, there's no point in coming back for another interview because we'll have explained to you that you've been permanently banned. But again, people just have the simple 214B, intending immigrant, which can be overcome in the future by coming in, interviewing, and showing that you now qualify.
Understood. Now, we just have a couple more minutes, and I wanted to demystify some things because I had conversations with persons to ask them if they had the opportunity or what do they understand in terms of the whole process. And some of these things were very interesting that people held beliefs of, and if you can help me demystify that. So one of the things people feel as though, and they have strong conviction on this, that the U.S. Embassy or its officers check their bank account prior to them coming to the visa interview.
Certainly not. We do not have access to your bank accounts or information about that. So most people do bring their bank information with them, and most of the time we do not ask to look at it, but if you have it with you, and we do ask, it's always good to have. But again, there are many documents, and this is another mystical thing here, that people think they need to bring their whole life with them when they come in. Certainly bring in your work documents, your bank documents, anything that you think might be important, a few documents here and there, but we may not even ask for them, and 90% of the time we don't. So that's why we don't say it's a requirement. You can bring whatever paperwork you want with you, and we probably won't look at it. But yeah, we don't have access to anyone's bank account.
Understood. Another question or another belief held by persons is that at the embassy, the officers decide prior to the interview who gets a visa and who doesn't.
That's definitely a myth. The whole point of the interview is to ask questions, to ascertain the person in front of them whether the information is correct, whether the person is credible, and find out key information necessary to make a determination. So nothing is decided ahead of time. And the other question, which is probably your next one, there's no quota. We can use 100% of the people. We can approve 100% of the people. It all depends on the people in front of us. And some days the numbers do change, and we ask ourselves, like, what was the people today? We either approved a lot or we reduced a lot. But it's completely based upon the individual in front of the interviewing officer, and it can go either way depending on that individual's qualifications.
Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate that you kind of jumped at what the next question would be, because these are, when you really talk to persons and who, in some cases, really just don't read or seek out the information available to them, they kind of come up with all of these thoughts and these myths about the whole process. But I really appreciate you taking the time to come and explain to us, because I'm sure a lot of persons who are looking on to this program right now are walking away with a renewed understanding or appreciation for the process of applying for a U.S. visa here in Trinidad and Tobago. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share with our viewers this morning about the visa process or anything relating to visas?
Sure. Well, we want to thank you for inviting us on. Our goal is to reach out to the people to every way possible, so we'll be happy to come back again in the future. And just everybody go to the official websites, which is either the U.S. Embassy website here in Trinidad and Tobago or the State Department website, which is travel.state.gov, which has all the information you can possibly imagine about visas anywhere in the world, including Trinidad and Tobago. So that's the #1 resource that we even go to get information. So travel.state.gov. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And of course, folks, what essentially we were doing were demystifying the whole process surrounding U.S. visa applications. A lot of questions that people have, and hopefully this really zones in on that. I had with me the visa chief at the U.S. Embassy of Trinidad and Tobago, Frank Lavoie, who took time out of his schedule this morning to help explain, and we're so grateful for that.